Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
But who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And what he do?
And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fresh episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer. And today we're reacting to the news that Young Thug, a.k.a. Jeffrey Williams, and 28 others were indicted in Georgia. They were indicted in Fulton County on RICO charges. What are RICO charges? It's the racketeering charges. Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organizations Act. Now, most states have a version of it, and it basically is something that they use to do a wide sweeping net over a lot of people. And it was originally used for mafia back in the 30s or whatever, to get organized crime. Now, let's talk about what we're looking at here. Young Thug was taken into custody at his home. His home was being raided, and now he's being held at the Fulton County Jail, probably held on no bail for right now. Gunna, or Sergio Giovanni Kitchens, has also been charged with one count of conspiracy violating the RICO Act. Well, let's break this down a little bit, because first of all, they're all charged with conspiracy to violate RICO. The RICO statute in Georgia has a 5-year mandatory minimum sentence with a maximum of 20 years. But embedded in this indictment are a bunch of other charges. Now, there are 28 people who are part of this indictment. And some of the things that they're charged with, including murder, assault, threats of violence, and these are all things done in the name of the gang. And the name of the gang here is Young Slime Life. And when you think about saying that in court, they're starting out in a hole there a little bit. Anyway, but preserving, protecting, and enhancing the reputation, power, and territory of the enterprise through the acts of racketeering activity, including murder, assault, and threats of violence. So we also are looking at, through images, songs demonstrating allegiance to the enterprise and a willingness to engage in violence. We also have the use of violence to protect the reputation and the territory of the gang. We also have the unlawful sale and distribution of drugs, illegal drugs. And we also have witness intimidation. So those are the basic 5 things that they're talking about in the indictment with respect to the conspiracy. Now, there are other counts. Now, even though the racketeering language itself has a 20-year maximum, if you're charged with a conspiracy to commit murder, it's still murder. And that is something completely different. So let's go and see what we're talking about here. The indictment alleges that this is according to the New York Times, Williams is a founder of the New York Slime Life gang, a street gang that began in Atlanta in 2012. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, 2012, what's the statute of limitations on something like this? Because some of the activity that dates back to 2014, and that's like 8 years ago. Well, guess what? When you have a conspiracy case, the statute of limitations doesn't stop running on. First of all, on murder there is no statute of limitations, so on conspiracy to commit murder there's no statute of limitations. But the statute of limitations on a conspiracy case tolls as long as it's an ongoing conspiracy. Okay. And so as long as they're continuing to commit these acts, something that happened 8 years ago, if they're charged under RICO, continues. And so the statute of limitations doesn't run until the last act occurs. And so the last thing that they talk about in the indictment, I believe, is shootings in 2015. There's things going on in 2018. So the indictment is an 88-page indictment, and it alleges that the gang was involved in a wide variety of illegal activities, including witness intimidation, murder, attempted murder, carjacking, robbery, theft, and drug dealing. A number of people are named as victims of shootings or attempted shootings, including Dwayne Carter. Do you remember Dwayne Carter? The New Orleans hip-hop star who raps under the name Lil Wayne, and whose tour bus was shot at by a YSL member named Jimmy Winfrey in April of 2015, according to the indictment. So when you have a RICO charge, anything you do to support the organization, anything you do, if you post media with social media with cash, saying Thug Life or YSL, or if you commit a robbery and give the money to the gang, or if you wear gang colors, anything you do can be used as evidence in the furtherance of a RICO charge. Now, Young Thug, or Mr. Williams, is named as having committed a number of illegal acts. So he personally is named, for which he is not charged, but which he is described as overt acts in furtherance of the group's conspiracy. Which brings up another thing. What is a conspiracy? A conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people to commit a crime and an act in furtherance of the conspiracy. You don't even need to do the act. All you have to do is something in furtherance. I'll give you an example. Had a client who had an agreement to kill his buddy's parents. This is just an amazing story. My guy goes down there to his house. They've got guns. They're ready to go. He gets up to the door and he chickens out. And then they leave. That conspiracy was to murder those two people. It was completed the minute they got in the car. So any overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy completes a conspiracy. Let's see. Among the other allegations are instances of threatening to kill a man at a mall and possession of methamphetamine with the intent to distribute it. Mr. Williams is also alleged to have rented a silver Infiniti Q50 sedan that was used in the commission of the murder of a rival gang member, Donovan Thomas, in 2015. And if you remember what I said, statute of limitations doesn't toll while there's an ongoing conspiracy. 5 of these guys are charged with murder in connection with Thomas's death. One of them, Deontay Kendrick, is identified as Yak Gotti, a rapper on the YSL label. Now, his bail is going to be really high. This is an A-list star, right? Now, his lawyer, who has represented Williams in the past, declined to comment on the media. This is, I think, the smartest thing a lawyer can do when you have a high-profile case like this. Number one, you have no idea what the indictment, you're just kind of digesting what the indictment is. 88-page indictment. For him to comment on it would be inappropriate. Not to mention, there's a rule that says you really shouldn't comment on publicly about cases, but guys do anyway. What I hate is when you have a lawyer that comes out, my client is innocent, he's fighting this to the death, blah, 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 blah. And then what happens down the road? He winds up either taking a deal or they wind up getting convicted. So you're talking out of your ass. You're best off just not saying anything. So the lawyer who's representing Williams now, though, decided not to take my advice. And he said, Mr. Williams came from an incredible, horrible upbringing, and he has been conducting himself throughout his life in a way that is just to marvel at. Mr. Steele said, he's committed no crime whatsoever. The indictment is baseless to include him. Well, we'll see. But when you talk like that, in such absolutes, that's just for public consumption. Now, Sergio Kitchens, also known as Gunna, he was charged in the indictment, and the indictment alleges he committed felonies, including receiving stolen property and drug possession with intent to distribute. One of the things that they're going to do in this case is they really need to highlight the gang activity, because the gang activity is what gives rise to the RICO. And in previous court documents, prosecutors have described how another cluster of blood-affiliated gangs engaged in a hostile rivalry with Young Slime Life in April 2021. Ms. Willis charged a dozen people who were said to be members of the gangs in a rival cluster, including Rayshawn Bennett, another famous rap artist whose stage name is YFN, Lucci. Mr. Bennett was indicted on, among other things, a felony murder charge in connection with a drive-by shooting. Monday's indictment charges 3 people accused of being YSL members with attempted murder in an attack on Mr. Bennett, who was stabbed in jail in February. I'm not impressed with the fact that you're a rapper. That's not going to keep you from being indicted by default, Ms. Willis said. That's the prosecutor down there in Georgia. Said at a news conference in April, in which he criticized the judge for granting bond to Christian Eppinger. So you're going to see that a lot of these guys are going to be denied bond. Now, here's the other thing. Remember what I've been trying to tell you guys all along, We saw the old block indictment, right? And now we're seeing this indictment. And guess what? According to the New York Times, the new charging document, other court records show that Fulton County prosecutors have been paying close attention to what? To music and social media output of the Atlanta area rappers. So you got to be really flippin' careful of what you put on fucking line. You just, because they're going to use it against you. It's called self-snitching. The indictment claims that after the killing of Mr. Thomas, the rival gang member Mr. Williams appeared in a video in which he stated that some people get killed, bro, from me and YSL, while using an expletive. In another 2018 video, he's alleged to have said, I never killed anybody, but I got somebody to do with that body. So, when you use your own words are coming in as evidence if they implicate you in crime. Remember what I called it? It's called a statement of a party opponent. You're the state's one party, you're the other party. Your words can be used against you. Let's analyze the statement. I've never killed anybody, but I got something to do with that body. Now, if he rented a car and in the purpose of renting that car is to put people in it so they can go kill somebody, he might as well have pulled that trigger because he's just as guilty of that crime as whoever's pulling that trigger. So the lie, and then you put it in a fucking video. That's a defense lawyer's worst nightmare. Why are you self-snitching? As we analyze this whole thing, they cast a wide net, right? And you're going to have people who are at the bottom who have, they're just kind of hangers on and, and they probably know a lot but haven't done a lot. And then you've got people like Young Thug, who they claim is the founder of the gang and is at the top. And they're going to get snitches out of this. I guarantee you they're going to get snitches. They got young guys who are going to be scared shitless, and they're going to sit in fucking jail, and they're going to sweat them out. When you're sitting there looking at an indictment of this magnitude, and you either don't have much criminal history or you don't have much experience fighting a case, you're going to be a little... And you're going to have a lawyer who says, look, the only way out of this fucking thing is for you to snitch. That's what's going to happen. This sort of mirrors what they're doing on a national scale. I wouldn't be surprised to see the same thing come out of Jacksonville, especially with all the homicides that have gone on there. This is the soup du jour. This is the crime du jour, the crime of the day, where... in an effort to, these are great headlines for prosecutors because it makes them look like they're cleaning up the streets. In Minneapolis, for example, the U.S. Attorney's Office is now prosecuting a lot of carjackings because we've had so many carjackings lately. They and that's really not a federal issue, generally speaking. Generally, you see carjackings charged on a state level. So what does this mean for Young Thug, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Kitchens, Gunna? It all depends upon what the evidence shows. You can't really tell much from an indictment how strong a government's case is. But if he's convicted of any kind of conspiracy to commit murder, he can be looking at the max of 20 or even life. And remember what I said, that the RICO statute carries with it mandatory 5 years. So if he's convicted, they're going to get at least 5 years. But if they're tied in any of the homicides, it's the homicide that is the real statute that you are going to worry about, and they could be looking at life without parole. So let's hope his defense team has got their shit together, that they have a good defense, good investigator, a good team of folks to put around him and fight this thing. But they're tough cases to fight. So this has just been a quick update of Young Thug and Mr. Jeffrey Williams. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Remember, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, and sign up for Patreon. We have Patreon members, and if you're a Patreon member, I'll get to your reactions that you request specifically, and we use that money to help indigent people get out of jail. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.